Once upon a time, maybe 30 years ago, right here in New York City, in parks right here in the Bronx, a kid who called himself Cool Herc, he was maybe 20 years old, would come here dragging boxes filled with records, and then he'd set up a card table, and on the card table he'd put 2 record players, a mixer, and big speakers. People heard the music, and pretty soon the whole neighborhood was showing up.
Everybody was there. All the criminals and all the beautiful people and all the grandmothers and all the stick-up kids, moms and pops and children, they were all there. When I seen that, I said, this is what I want to do.
Joseph Sadler, better known as Grandmaster Flash, had always loved music, always. But back then, watching Cool Herc spin those records in the park, as he watched, something clicked deep inside.
I had this fascination with taking a bicycle, right, turning it upside down and just spinning the wheel and just watching it until it stopped spinning. I guess from that point of view there, I guess when I finally stood in front of a turntable, I guess it was like the ultimate thing for me.
And that's when he thought, I can do better than Herc. I can take a very short, discrete musical moment like this.
I used to call it the get down part. It was later called the break. You know, I said, well, if I can take this 10 or 15 seconds where just the bass guitarist and the drummers doing their thing by themselves, everybody else is taking a break, you know, and just take this particular section and repeat it over and over and over again. Wow, I wonder what that would do.
In his head, he could hear what it would do. He could hear elements repeating, extending, blending, but to do that, he had to build a system.
And I took 3 years of my life in my bedroom. I sacrificed the girls early in my teenagerhood, you know, and I sacrificed hanging out in the basketball courts and just hanging out. I sacrificed most of my kid years to try to just take this thing that was just running around in my head and make it a reality.
And how old was he, you know, back then?
18, 19, you know.
In those years, he got so into his records, he noticed if you look right into the grooves, into the vinyl, you can see the break. So look at this record, and you see this light ring right here? Inside this ring, there are fewer musicians playing. So this ring, you see, is the break.
When the band breaks down, the grooves sort of open up, widen. So if you look at a vinyl, you can tell where there are less musicians playing.
But how do you find the first note in a break? In fact, how do you find one note on a 12-inch record? Well, you see here he kind of cheats. He draws an arrow on the label pointing to the right place, and then, as insurance,
I went out and I got crayons or grease pencils, and I would literally mark the section in the record carefully, lightly. So now I can land on it. It's right there.
Then he had to choose the right needle and the wiring.
If I put this with that and that with this, I could possibly make this thing work here. Like a crazy obsession, so to speak.
After a while, he began to evolve a new musical form, built from pre-existing music. So you see here he's got 2 turntables, and there's a switch in between that can switch from one record to the other. And what he's going to do first is rotate the records backwards. This is called scratching. You'll see he does all kinds of scratches, but if you were dancing to this, you'd never lose the beat. They're kind of like little jazz improvisations. Little riffs perfectly placed inside the beat. Next, he's going to find a 2-word phrase. Good times. Did you hear that? Play it again. Good times. The trick here is to hit the G of good times on turntable number 1, then flip and hit the G of good times on turntable number 2, which is a little bit like finding 2 needles in 2 moving haystacks. But can he do this? Ready? Go. Back and forth. You
try that.
It's not easy. And it's very not easy when you're doing it in a dark dance hall, and then because you can, you're flipping back and forth while doing it. This is incredible. When Grandmaster Flash began showing off this music in playgrounds and parks in the 1970s, right away he got a crowd. Latin kids would breakdance to it. Graffiti artists were inspired by it. There wasn't any money in it, not then, and I wondered, well, what was he thinking? Why did he do it?
The idea of taking something totally different was just an incredible thing. To go in my room and just get lost in this room and just bring to life what's in my head and then test it on the people and have them enjoy it. Once they enjoyed it, that's all it took.
But it turned out that just playing the music was not enough, not quite. Grandmaster Flash says that his first audiences just stared at him.
People were quiet as a church mouse. There was no hoopla. People weren't going crazy. I'm playing the break of all these songs.
Until he got help finally from people like this guy, people who could talk and rhyme and get the crowd going with certain phrases.
Throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care and say ho and clap your hands to the beat and all this and that.
Rappers, they were called, and then later masters of ceremonies, MCs, like MC Curtis Blow here. And then a group of rappers, the Furious Five, who appeared with Flash. It was the combination, the music and the words, that's what got this going. But still, the DJs who ran the dance clubs would not give him a job.
The DJs would not let me play. No.
Until finally, the owner of one club said, all right, we'll give you one night.
I was hopefully looking for a weekend night. Gave me a Tuesday. You know, didn't too much like the idea of that, you know. Called it Terrible Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, unquestionably the worst night of the week, and yet in 1975, it was on those Tuesdays that Grandmaster Flash passed from obscurity into legend. He got up on the stage with his MCs, his rappers, and right away, he knew
that I was able to just get on for a few minutes and watch people lose their minds. I was like, okay, this is it.
Put your hands up, put them up, put them up, put them up, put them up.
And since that time, the sound that he helped create has moved out of his head to become the music of an entire generation.